Hi, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. So this is the first video in my Creating Characters series of videos, and today I actually want to talk to you about character profiles. And I know in the introduction I said that creating characters is more than a character profile, which it is, but a character profile is also part of that, because you do need the information that comes with a character profile or a character sheet or whatever you whatever you want to call it. So in any story there are several different types of characters. Obviously you have your protagonist. You're always going to have your protagonist of some kind, so that's your main character. You will most likely have an antagonist. I know sometimes the antagonist can be the environment, but most of the time the antagonist is going to be another person. You're then going to have supporting characters, so you'll have like the mentor character, the best friend, the parent, those kind of things. You'll have some minor characters. Most books that people are writing will not just have one character. So when I'm going through these profile sheets, you need to fill in this sheet for all of your characters, or for all of your important characters. I know you'll have minor characters that really don't matter. These are characters such as the person who serves your main character in the supermarket, or someone that they pass in the street, or a patron in a cafe. If they don't matter to the story, you don't need to fill that in. However, what I will say is if you're going to kill a character off, and this is one of my favourite bits of advice that I ever got or ever heard, was from James Patterson. So I took his masterclass ages ago, and he talked about if you have a character that you're going to kill off, make sure that your readers care about them, because it has so much more of an impact. And so if you have a character that you are going to kill off for whatever reason, maybe you're writing a crime story and so you have a victim, or maybe you've got a monster story and there's another victim, your victim character that's going to be killed needs to also have a character profile. And the reason for this, that James Patterson says, is that the more the reader cares about the person you kill off, the better emotional impact it has. And I thought that was the best bit of advice. If you've ever watched Star Trek, they have what's called the red shirt. So you know, anyone in a red shirt starting in the episode was going to be basically cannon fodder for the rest of the episode, but they never had an impact. Nobody cared if they died. So I'm going to say to you, if you have characters that die in your story for whatever reason, you need to fill profile sheets in for them. And the reason is the more that you know them, the more you're going to put them on the page, the more the reader's going to care about them, the more bigger the emotional impact is when that character dies. So before you kind of jump into filling in the character profile, depending on where you are in the book, I'm assuming you're at the beginning, at the brainstorming stage, then you should write a list of characters that are going to need profiles. So one of my favourite characters, and this is probably where I developed this habit from, is Jimmy from Better Call Saul, or you might know him as Saul Goodman if you've watched Breaking Bad. And when I was watching that series, I was just in awe in the characterisation of Jimmy and how he was pulled together, not just as Jimmy the character, but everybody in his life kind of made him who he was. So if you've never watched it, Jimmy he's just passed the bar, he's trying to make it as a lawyer like his big brother, and he's struggling. He basically works, or has his office in the basement of a manicure place, and you know, he's kind of bottom of the barrel lawyer, but it's not for trying. He is trying to make a go of his life and a go of this career. So he's got other people in his life. There's Kim, who is like his best friend, and she probably acts like the mentor character in his life. She also becomes the romantic interest in his life, but she's kind of like the friend at the beginning, giving him advice, and I suppose she still is when they're in a romantic relationship. Then you've got Chuck, or Charles, who is his brother. He's a hot shot lawyer, partner in a firm, has made it, is well respected. He's like the opposite end of the lawyer scale than what Jimmy is, except he has a mental illness and Jimmy has to look after him. Then there's Howard, who is a partner with Chuck in the law firm, who's always looked down on Jimmy, won't give him a job, won't give him a chance, and Jimmy's also always kind of seen him as the competition and trying to beat him. And these characters within the story are the supporting characters, but they make up the character that is Jimmy. Without them, I think he would be missing something, and so would we in our connection to him. And that's why as it goes through the series, you feel so much attachment to all of them. And then other characters that they bring in, there's Nacho Vega. He's a drug guy that comes in and he has a whole story arc himself, and he's basically he's like a secondary supporting character. Then there's Lalo that comes in and you have his story and he's like an antagonist kind of thing. And I just absolutely fell in love with the way that they made Jimmy through all of these characters, and that's what I'm hoping that this profile sheet will do for you. And having profile sheets filled in for all of your characters, so you will have your main character and then it's by a circle of characters around them, and you fill it in for those, and they all feed in to your main character to make them more of a full character that readers can really get into and enjoy. I have a character profile sheet which I'll link my mailing list below. Don't worry, it's not like a newsletter. I'm not going to bug you with loads of things. I might email you when there's a new video out, but other than that, I don't really email on it. But by signing up, what you will get is access to where I have my documents like the character profile. They're free for you to download. Just go and get it, print it off as many times as you want, use it how you like. But I'm going to run through it now, and like I said, you can download it, or go and download it now and you can fill it in as we're going, and feel free to pause me as we're going along. So the usual stuff at the beginning, because you do need to know this. So when I was first starting out as an author, I always thought that creating your characters was literally just filling in the character profile sheet and boom, you have a character. But it was a character profile on such a basic level. It was down to name, age, height, what they liked on their toast, where they went to school, and you know, just stuff that doesn't make them who they are. Like if you think about yourself, all that stuff, you know, my red hair, my brown eyes does not make me who I am. It's all the things around me that makes me who I am. And so I have developed this profile sheet for my characters to get more in depth and not just have that basic profile sheet. So that being said, let's get into it. So there are the basic things in there. There is the name, and a lot can be said about the name. Names say things about people, and we make assumptions about people based on their names. So if you imagine there's someone called Constance, you're going to imagine that that is an older person. Where if there's someone called Brittany, you're going to imagine it's kind of this young 20-something girl. And so when you're naming your character, keep that in mind, that names do kind of carry a stereotype with them. So then we have age, self-explanatory, story role, so that's important. Who are they? Main character, side character, supporting character, parent, blah blah blah. Who are they in your story? Physical description, so this is your eye colour, how tall they are, what body shape they have, what their colour hair is, how short their hair is. And you do need to write this down. It might seem not important, but believe me, if you're writing a series, you get to book 5, you will forget their eye colour. No matter if it's your main character or not, I forget eye colour and hair colour and so many other things so often. It's just handy to have these written down so that you can come back to them. Then we have clothes, and what I'm talking about with clothes is what would your character wear on a typical day. Now clothes say a lot about us, so I tend to wear a lot of rock stuff, t-shirts, jeans, shorts. You very rarely would find me in a dress. I obviously have dyed red hair, I've got black earrings in and all that, so you would make an assumption on my personality based on what I wear. Whereas somebody in a flowery dress with flip-flops and blonde hair, again, you would make an assumption. So what would your character wear on a typical day? So if I base this off Ethan, in my Death Dealer series, Ethan is like 6'4". He has these big black biker boots that he wears all the time, big dark jeans, he's got a leather jacket, you know, he's kind of like, he dresses like a biker kind of person, and he is a bounty hunter, so what he wears kind of goes with what he is. So abilities and skills. So this would especially help if you are writing a magic kind of book or an urban fantasy. Do they have any magical skills, or is there a skill set that is important in your story? For example, we all know that Liam Neeson in Taken has a particular set of skills, so what are your character's skills and abilities that come into the story? So another one in this basic part is their daily routine. What do they do when they are not being tortured by you, the author? What is their normal day like? Do they have a day job? Do they have family? Do they have children? What do they do in their everyday life? So for me, in the Death Dealers, Harper, she works at a morgue, so her everyday life is working in the morgue, cleaning bodies, working for a boss she doesn't like. She has a boyfriend that treats her a bit like rubbish, so when she's not working, she's either seeing him or she's seeing her best friend. And that's her basic life and what she does. So what does your character do when they are not in your story? What do they do? And the reason this is important is because it makes good backdrops for scenes. So Harper has a crappy boyfriend boyfriend, so she can there's a scene at the beginning where we throw in that she's having an argument, or not an argument with him, but like a dispute with him, because he's being arsey as he is and letting her down. It's not necessarily important to the story, but it is important to who Harper is and to give her more depth, if that makes sense. The next part of the profile talks about the inner journey of your character. So there's always an inner journey and an outer journey to your characters, and both of them go hand in hand. Obviously the outer journey is the story and the plot things that happen along the way, and the inner journey is how your character interacts with those plot points. So I'm going to talk about the inner journey now. So what does your character want at the start of the book? What do they want? So Ethan's want is to find his sister. She went missing a few years ago and he's not seen her. She went out one night. He's been looking for her. He blames himself for her going missing. He suspects she's obviously dead because it's been so long. And he thinks that by finding her, it will put some closure on his life and make him not feel so guilty, because he blames himself for her going missing and what happened to her because she went missing after a fight with him. His actual need, and the need is usually something that your character does not know that they need, because what they want, they usually think what they want is what's going to make them happy, but it's what they need is going to make them happy. And for Ethan, the need is to forgive himself for everything. So Ethan has a brother and a sister. His brother is magically insane and is in an institute. Basically his magic is just too strong and it's really affected his mental health, and he's classed as magically insane and is institutionalized. So Ethan blames himself for that, not being able to help his brother, having to put him into an institution, which is basically like voluntarily putting his brother into prison. He then blames himself for his sister going missing because they had an argument. She left, just walked out, and then she was never seen since, and so he blames himself for that. And his past, he's kind of had really tough past, and he was like the strong kid out of the three. His mother was a human. She was druggy, drinker, a stream of men coming into her life. He used to take the beatings of the man she did settle with and kind of protect his brother and sister, because his sister was little and his brother had this problem with his magic. So growing up, he took on this responsibility role for his siblings, and because his brother is in this institute and his sister is missing, he carries a lot of guilt, and because of that guilt, he does not let anyone into his life very close, because he feels that he is toxic. He is going to hurt them in some way. He's going to cause them problems. He blames himself for the mother leaving them, and so his actual need is to get closure on these items in his life and learn that these things weren't his fault, that he's not to blame, and to forgive himself on the little sister leaving. So the need is often something really big that's happened to them that the character doesn't know they need, but they're trying to fix it with this want, which is just not hitting the mark. So he wants to find his sister and he thinks that will solve all his problems. So then we go into childhood. What was their childhood like? And not all characters have to have had a bad childhood to have conflict in their adult life. Now obviously Ethan has had a bad childhood, you know, raised by a druggy mother, example, and the other characters in the Death Dealers for me are Harper. She's the main voice in the series. She hasn't really had a bad life, but she is a magical like Ethan. She is a death dealer, but she's trying to hide that, and the reason for that is because her mother is quite a domineering person who is very much about appearances and what people think about her, and to have a magical daughter was like having a daughter who was handicapped, and she sees handicapped as a bad thing. So she medically corrected Harper's magic and kind of always put her down. You know, taught her that she was never enough, never good enough, and that's how she's always felt. So her childhood has given her this feeling like she's never enough, which obviously is going to feed into her one. And we do meet Logan in my series, and his childhood was pretty good. He's the werewolf detective in the story. He was raised in a pack, and his childhood was, you know, typical pack life. So what is your character's childhood like? Was it a good childhood? Are they close to their parents? Were they adopted? Were they fostered? Were they orphaned? Obviously a lot of people do that, but your character's childhood and everybody's childhood shapes them in adulthood, and your characters are absolutely no different. So what was your character's childhood like? So then we have the misbelief about themselves, and this is often called their fatal flaw, their misbelief, their wound. What is the belief about themselves that they believe and carry through life and make all their decisions? And we all have them as people. Everyone has some kind of misbelief about ourselves, whether it's we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we ruin everything. So obviously Ethan's misbelief about himself is that he is toxic to everybody in his life and he causes them pain. He believes that his mother was a druggie because of him. He believes that he was beaten because of who he was. He believes that his sister went missing because of the argument and he caused that. He believes that his brother is in an institute because he caused that, and putting him in the institute is causing the pain. So he believes that he's a toxic person, and because of that he keeps himself back and away from everybody because he's pretty sure anyone's life he comes into he's going to ruin. However, the next one, what is your character most afraid of? And most of the time this what is the character most afraid of is the exact thing that they have a misbelief of. So Ethan believes that he is toxic in people's lives, he causes them pain, he makes them dislike him. So his fear is that anyone who comes into his life, he's going to hurt them and he's going to cause them pain, and this is why he puts the barrier up in front of them. So when he meets Harper, he wants to help her because that's just who he is actually deep inside, but because he fears he's going to ruin her life by helping her, he puts this barrier between them, which creates a conflict between him and Harper, and obviously which comes out through the story. So what is your character's biggest fear? And I'd say it's the same with Harper. So her misbelief comes from her mother, from her childhood, that she's not good enough and she's not worthy. So that's the misbelief about herself, and as such she has an idiot boyfriend. He treats her like a doormat, he clearly cheats on her, but she thinks she has this internalized idea that she's not worthy of a good man. So she holds on to him in ways that are not healthy for her and kind of just make it worse. So her fear is that he will say she's not worthy and he will leave. So do you see how these all feed into each other? And obviously if you go back a little bit, her need is to learn that she is good enough so that she should get rid of this boyfriend and she is a good enough person and will be totally fine on her own. So do you see how these things mix in with the internal story of your character? And the last one on the internal stuff is more of it's a little bit internal, a little bit external. So how does your character react to emotions, to conflict? What is their go-to kind of reaction to something? So if Harper was in a restaurant and somebody overcharged her for the meal and she knew she would have been overcharged, she wouldn't speak up about it. She wouldn't make a fuss because this is what she's been taught. Whereas Ethan, because he's very much in control of everything, he would call the waiter over, complain about it. So this is what I'm saying, how would your character react to things in their life? And it can just be simple things like a wrong order at a restaurant, or it could be a big thing, a relationship. How would they react if somebody died, for example? So Harper would react different to Ethan. If somebody died in Ethan's life that was important to him, he would internalize that a lot. He would go quiet, he would take himself away from everyone. It would kind of cement this misbelief that he's toxic because he would somehow figure that death was his fault, even if it wasn't. So how does your character react to emotions and conflict? And then we have, what are the top three most important things in your character's life? And this could be a physical item, it could be something a mental item. So for Harper, one of the most important things is her job. It's the best thing she has. She loves working with the dead, she understands them, and it was, even though it was a career that her mother did not want her to have, it was one that she got all by herself and she achieved it. She also has a necklace that was given to her by her grandmother, and that has more of a sentimental value to her. And then her other top thing in her life is her best friend, because her best friend is the only person who does not make her feel like she is unworthy. And they've been best friends since school. They're kind of like the opposites, but they work and they fit. So they are Harper's top. So what's your character's top three things in their life? And like I said, they could be an object, they could be a person, they could be be a situation. Just 3 things that are important, and why are they important. So like I said with Better Call Saul, he was the sum of all the other people around him. So we'll talk a little bit about your character's relationships with people. So who are the people in your character's life? So for Ethan, he has an aunt who he sees occasionally. He has helped her financially in some ways, and she's like a surrogate mother to him. There's his brother who is in the institute, there's his missing sister. So the aunt and the brother are actually in the book of his sister's missing and the mother's long gone, so they're not around. So he has very few connections because of his misbelief. For Harper, she has her mother and father. She's an only child, so there's no siblings. She has her best friend and she has her boyfriend. Eventually she'll have Ethan, but those are the people around her. She also has her boss. So those are the people in her life. And who are the characters in your character's life, and what role do they play in your character's life? Who are they? So for Harper, she has the best friend who they go out together, they do stuff together, they hang out, and that's kind of when Harper is probably most like herself when she's with her best friend. There's her mother, like I said, who's a little bit domineering. So when she's around her, she has a different kind of mask on. She's very much playing up to what her mother wants. She's very close to her father. He's very easygoing, and so she can be a bit more like the daughter that she would have been around her father. And then there is the boyfriend who kind of brings out the worst needy parts of her that she aren't healthy for her. And then eventually we'll have Ethan come along when they meet. So like I say, who are the characters in your character's life, and why are they there? What do they mean? So do they have secrets from the important people in their lives? So for Harper, she is a magical being. She has magical powers. She's a death dealer, as they're called. And her mother, when she was growing up, realised this when she accidentally raised the neighbour's dead dog and had it following her around. And so magicals are known in my world. So as soon as that happened, her mother got her medicated and got the magic shut down inside her, because magic is bad. And because she's always been taught that her magic is a bad thing, she has hidden it. So the secret she has from her best friend and also from her boyfriend is that she has these magical powers of being able to talk to and raise the dead. This is where Ethan comes in, because he is a fellow magical with similar powers. He can speak to the dead, whereas she can see the dead. He can detect her powers, and that's how she's going to grow with him. So you can see how listing the abilities earlier on in this profile kind of feeds into each bit. But that she has that secret from people. The other one is, how did the characters meet? So again, this tells different parts of life. Harper met her best friend in school. They were the most unlikely people. Harper was kind of the nerd hidden away, whereas her best friend was the popular kid, and they kind of met in a fight and decided to be friends, and that's how they've been friends ever since. And that again will say a lot about who they are. She met the boyfriend in a nightclub, and that tells of what she likes to do in her time off. So how did your characters meet? How long have they known each other? So obviously Harper has known her best friend since she was about 11 or 12, whereas she has only known her boyfriend about 2 years. So is there conflict with them? So obviously there's conflict for Harper with her boyfriend. He treats her like rubbish. He's this really rich guy and she's poor, and he lets that be known, and because of this, he further plants this idea that she's not good enough in her brain, and he kind of solidifies that misbelief she has about herself. So that is the conflict, because he is constantly at that wound and touching it, and his actions when he doesn't turn up for things, when he cancels on her, constantly brings up and touches that wound that she has, and that creates conflict in the story. So how will their relationship change over the story? So obviously the biggest change for Harper in the Death Dealer's relationship is going to be Ethan. So they have kind of met by the beginning of the story, but as they get to know each other, it's going to change, because her magic has been hidden for a long time and Ethan's hasn't, and he's going to not understand how she's had this hidden life, and she's not brave enough to use her magic like he is, because he's a bounty hunter for the Mages Council, so obviously magic is his life. So she is going to change through the story with accepting who she is, obviously are going to play into that misbelief. So how is our relationships going to change? Obviously Robert, the more she grows confidence in herself, the relationship with Robert will probably end, and the best friend, she will maybe one day probably reveal the secret that she's got magic, and the best friend's going to think this is the best thing ever because the best friend is into all the woo-woo stuff, you know, and will think it's absolutely brilliant. And then when we've done with their relationships, we're going to talk about goals and a little bit of the personal things. So we talk a lot about the misbelief and conflict, but what does your character actually like about themselves? Because we don't all hate ourselves 100% necessarily, and characters don't. So what do they like about themselves? So Harper absolutely loves her job. It's her favourite thing about herself. She got it all by herself. It was an achievement she did, and it kind of fights against that misbelief that she's not worthy because she did this despite her mother not wanting her to. Ethan likes the magic. That is who he is. He likes his magic abilities. He likes using them, and he feels that they are a real integral part of his identity, and that is shown by the fact that he works for the Mages Council and what he does generally. So what does your character like about themselves? And it could be something simple like how they physically look. They think, you know, they love the way they look. They love someone in their life. What does your character like about themselves or their life? So another question is, what is their false self? So all characters have a false self. We all have false selves. Who are you out in the world? Who is your character out in the world? So for Ethan, he is cold. He doesn't care about anybody. He's not interested in making connections or making friendships. He is a loner, and he's happy being a loner. And that is his false self. That's what he puts out into the world because it feeds into his misbelief, and if he keeps everyone at bay, he can't hurt anybody. However, what is your character's true self? So who are they inside? So inside, he's actually very caring, he's loving, he cares about other people. This is what happens with Harper because he works for the Mages Council. So in this series, magical people have to be registered, and they have to have like a license to use their magic. And if they don't, there are prison sentences and punishments for that. And because Harper is hiding her magic and has been taught to hide it, she's never registered as a magical being. And when he notices her magic, because he's a bounty hunter of the Mages Council, she is exactly the kind of person that he would bring in before the council so that they could punish her, except he doesn't want to. He sees some good qualities in her, and so this caring side of him takes over a little bit, and he tries to help her, and so a little bit of his true self comes out, and that is who he is inside. And he does want connections, and he does want people in his life. He's just very afraid of them without knowing that he's afraid of them. So this bit is about conflict and goals and their motivations. So what do they believe will bring them happiness? So obviously for Ethan, he believes that finding his sister and understanding what happened to that is what's going to bring him happiness. Harper believes that her boyfriend's going to bring her happiness if she could just be worthy of him. So what does your character believe that will bring them happiness? So talking about the false self and the true self, how have these things held them back in life? How does it keep them back? And this again feeds a bit into the want and the needs. And as you can see, this is all very important in the story. So how has their false self and true self held them back? So for Ethan, it holds him back from developing relationships and actually getting the thing that he needs, which is to understand and forgive himself. For Harper, these inner and outer battles hold her back from understanding that she is actually worthy, but they also hold her back from reaching her true potential with her magic and being who she is and who she is meant to be. Because although the morgue job is what she wants to be, she is meant to be so much more than that, as will be seen in the story. One of the last things I like to do, so we talked about how the relationship with their friends or people with them will change. We need to, how will the characters change? And obviously this depends if you're writing a standalone book or a series. So I like to write, when I'm plotting my characters, how they change. So who are they at the start of your story? Who are they kind of in the middle? And who are they at the end? So obviously the Death Dealers is a series, so for me this is going to be progressive, but they kind of like have little notches of it along the way. So at the start of the story, when we meet Harper in Dead on Arrival, she is very much the doormat. She's got the boyfriend who doesn't give her any respect and treats her like rubbish. We've got the mother who's still trying to put her down. We've got the magic that's hidden, the friend who doesn't know about the magic, the boss who also treats her like a load of rubbish. So everybody cements this idea to her that she's not worthy. So at the beginning of the story, she acts like she's not worthy. And then through the middle of the story, obviously Ethan is going to come along, and he has, despite his own misbeliefs, he's quite a confident person. That's his outer shell and his false self. So that interacts with Harper, and she's going to start to learn that she is worthy of these things, that the magic isn't a bad thing. It doesn't make her bad. It doesn't make her unworthy. She's not like a second-rate citizen. And by the end of this story, which probably will be the end of the series for this, she's going to step into her own with the magic and who she is, and have shaken off the shackles that her mother originally put on her at the beginning of her life. So do this at the end. Who is your character? And in the beginning, middle and end, and it's kind of like just plotting a rough story arc. But like I said, this character profile is there. Just join my mailing list, you can go and get it, and feel free to ask me any questions. I hope this helps you to build full characters, and if there's anything you don't know about your character, that's fine. Just put some rough notes. One of the things that I learned is that because I'm kind of a hybrid plotter, I'm a discovery and a plotter, so I'll plot some bits but then I kind of discover and then plot a little bit more. I kind of do that. My characters will develop as I am doing that, and that's totally fine, and some of the things on your profile sheet might actually change as your story goes along, which is also fine. I actually find that writing my first draft of my story enables me to know the characters better than I did right at the beginning, because I've seen them interact with the other characters. So this profile sheet for your characters might actually be a work in progress while you're writing. But have a go before you write your book at filling this in, and like I say, if things change, cross them out and just change it as you go. And that is how we get these more in-depth characters. But I hope that helped. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them down below. Don't forget to give this video a like, smash that notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video, and don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you next time. Bye for now.